and she had to be on medications for 3 years. So all these things started stacking up against us with these liens, medical bills, couldn't pay our mortgage. It takes a lot to wind down a business when you've invested that in those stores. Like I just had all this equipment sitting there. I had landlords telling me to get it out. And coming after us, it felt like weekly with default, foreclosure for the house, for cars, for the business, for whatever it was. Man, I started to feel like I was drowning. In fact, there's that song that's they head underwater. They tell you to breathe easy for a while. That I kind of felt like everyone's like, it's going to be okay. I'm like, no, it's not.
My heart rate's like 190 right now. Like my entrepreneurial heart rate is like off the charts. Welcome to Brainstoke. I'm Tom Telford here with Preston Niederhauser. Team Brainstoke is actually in the studios of Mtn Ops today with Trevor Farnes, CEO, founder, amazing human. We're excited for this. This is cool. Thanks for having us.
Oh, super excited to have you. This is awesome.
So when we first met downstairs in the lobby, you mentioned or you shared that you and your daughter are going to run a half marathon here next week. Are you prepared to manage the chafing that comes?
You might have some advice for me, it sounds like, huh?
No.
Is there a powder for that?
We just take the powder that we, ingest and you just put a little bit of that in your hand. Yeah, I ran the Moab Marathon a couple years ago. I didn't experience much chafing. So
no need for
good.
Band-Aids
we'll
or Vaseline or anything, huh?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go. That's a good start to this podcast. Chafing.
Chafing.
Yeah,
maybe a new product line for us.
Yeah, I think it's
Seeing this operation and being here, it probably would sell. Just
you know what,
the brand and what's going on, it probably would.
We have shiny object syndrome at Mtn Ops, where it's like, hey, we've got to really narrow it down to what we should do, because there's so much we could do with this brand and the product, and we have requests all the time for different product offerings to put our name on, and we just can't do it all. I wish we had all the bandwidth, but it doesn't. We can't please everyone with everything, so. But it is an awesome brand that allows us to do a lot and to go really wide with our audience.
such a good problem to have, though.
Yep.
Right?
Very much.
It shows how loyal your customers are.
Yep.
They want you to create their other favorite products.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
When we showed up, we have such a childhood connection to the Rock Loft. Now your home offices. It's just cool, that what you've created here, who you are and what's going on. There is a risk, maybe even, that you want to think that this company has always been so successful, and that you've just kind of written the ticket and you're off and running. But the roots of it is really why we're here, and why Brainstoke is so interested in Trevor Farnes and the roots of how all of this began and the mental health story that's woven into all of it. And so let's go back, if you don't mind. Take, a few minutes and just describe, your background, maybe childhood, family, and start us there.
Okay. Yeah. Incredible family growing up. My parents, my siblings. I'm the sixth of 7 kids. Come from a very faith-based family that has loved adventure and the outdoors together. But hunting is new to me. We'll get into that maybe a little bit later. But incredible family. I have parents that I would say my mom's kind of a branding expert. She set out with a family motto. She named all of her kids from the start with letter T's. I don't know if you've heard this story, Preston.
No.
But all of us, there's 7 of us. I'm the 6th. There's Tim, Trisha, Tyler, Tammy, Tara, Trevor, and Trent. And that was all on purpose because our initials are TF, and she wanted this family motto, this family slogan, which is Together Forever. And that's the family environment I grew up in, with a family that the focus was on like this destination celestial. And that was my mom. So she's always coming up with these awesome little family models and slogans and such. And that's,
I love that.
yeah, together forever. And so I used to have friends and such come over all the time, and they try to rattle through all the names as quickly as possible. We'd time each other. And still to this day, there's family friends that come around. They're like, Tim, Trisha, Tyler, Tammy, Trevor. I barely got called Trevor growing up, but incredible family. Love my parents. They are so much of what we are doing here at Mtn Ops. And I look at the core values of Mtn Ops. They are core values that were taught in our home and that my parents just instilled in us. And so when you have an opportunity then in the future, when you're grown up and you're putting on your big boy pants and you're saying, okay, what am I going to do in this world? You look back at what your parents taught you. And if you have the freedom and ability to create around what you were taught, then you find that you have core values like recognizing God and trust and service and family and joy and these types of core values that were just instilled in me as a child with all my siblings. And so incredible growing up. I forget what the whole question was. Did you want me to go into the business, how it started, how far? I mean, this could go on a long.
Tell us more about your family, because I think that we're shaped by that, right? I mean, you talk about the values. So what's your mom's name, by the way?
So that's the funny thing. People always ask, well, are they T's? And it's like, no, it's Mary and Gary. And so it rhymes. So yeah, my mom grew up here in Utah, my dad in Idaho Falls, and they actually met in Washington, D.C. My dad was going to school at George Washington University. He ended up being a hospital administrator, ran IHC, was the CEO of the Wasatch Valley Hospitals here in Utah, then recruited to Holy Cross Health Systems in South Bend, Indiana when I was in high school. Did the whole education process and all that, and then went into the corporate world, climbed the ladder. I think was hoping that one of his sons would do the same, and we've all been entrepreneurs. My oldest brother, Tim, is kind of started it for us all and went down the entrepreneurial path, and we all got the bug. But my dad was back there going to school. My mom was a flight stewardess, and her route was to Washington State and back to Utah. And one weekend she got a call saying, would you go to Washington, D.C., fill in for someone? She'd never been there, so thought it would be cool. Flew to D.C. on a Saturday. The whole crew, the flight crew said, we're going to go on a tour of D.C. tomorrow on Sunday. She said, I'm going to go to church. And she went to church, and it was my dad's church. And there he was. The 16th Street Chapel in Washington, D.C. was where they met, both having chosen to do something that was important to them. And it was interesting because 35 years later, they started their first year of marriage there in D.C., came back, raised their kids in Utah. 35 years later, when I was in high school, they got a call to serve as mission leaders, mission president in Washington, D.C., North Mission, right where their love story all began. And so we've all just been blessed because of their decisions ever since. So that whole recognizing God goes back to watching how God brought them together in a place that they needed to be that day to find each other, and the rest is history. So
wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So the genesis of your company is all around your dad initially, right? Mm-hmm. But before we get into that, what about your dad instilled all this spirit of creation, of trying hard things? Sounds like that was there and instilled in maybe you and your siblings.
Yeah, I mean, he's just the epitome of hardworking man. He was the story of kind of nothing to something in life, where grew up in a home that was a good home, a great mother that taught him, but a father that wasn't always there, kind of a fishaholic, was always out. And if he took my dad, and if my dad caught him drinking, then my dad would go home and tell the mom, and so he never wanted to take my dad. So there was kind of this disconnection there, and was an only child until he was in his teens, and then he had a sister and brother, but he didn't have much growing up, and so to put himself through that type of school, going to BYU and then to George Washington, then a residency at Johns Hopkins University, he did it all on his own, funding it by himself, fishing. He was actually would get jobs in Alaska on fishing boats and stuff during the summer to raise enough money to pay for his schooling, and just super, super hardworking, and very, he just had this initiative, this drive. And I didn't see him much in the mornings growing up. He was always gone by 5 o'clock in the morning, up to the hospital. He loves people. People just loved him. I mean, my dad recently passed away, and the number of messages, we get sweaty eyes here at Mtn Ops every once in a while. We're in the fitness industry, so a lot of sweats, and the eyes aren't void of that. But Yeah, the number of people that he blessed, whether it was through his work or through his church service or just in the community, the neighbors that him and my mother just are incredible individuals that welcome people in. They make people feel like part of their life from the instant you get to know them. So, but he was just a hard worker and always accepted responsibilities, whether it be in church or work or whatnot, and rose through the ladder of success that way. And I always admired that about him. But his family always came first, and I always knew that growing up. He would be to every game. He worked hard, and but even in the mission, when he was a mission president, he'd showed up at every game in a suit and his name tag, and everyone wondered who this presidential type figure. He looked a little bit like Bill Clinton. So being there in Washington D.C. with that white wavy hair and stuff, it would catch people off guard. But just hardworking and integrity, I would say. My dad's character, everyone would know him as someone with integrity, somebody that would follow through and do what he said he was going to do.
Clearly the standard was set growing up in that household, from him about being a man of integrity. Tell us about your mom a little bit more, just in terms, the way you described her, it almost sounded like you were describing like a mom zealot, like just all in. She was charismatic,
all in on her family. It's everything to her. It still is. She's, they've got 36 grandkids and a handful of great grandkids. I don't know how many, but that was all my mom wanted to do, was be a mother, and didn't have a lot of friends or anything. She was focused on the kids and on the family. But super creative. Every event was special, very intentional, had meaning behind it. She is the epitome of someone who thinks celestial, who takes every life experience and applies it to kind of an eternal perspective. And it was funny growing up with neighbors and such that would come over and we'd get some really good cheese bread or something, and my mom would take a minute to say, "Hey, do you guys know what this reminds me of?" And she's faith-based, she's gospel-oriented, she wants to share the gospel all the time. She's like, "You taste this, you want to share it, you taste it," and they eat it. They're like, "This is really good, right? So I want to tell you about something else that's really good." And she, like, every conversation has been wrapped around her love of God and what God has given her, and this grand perspective that she can apply every little detail in life to. And so she's super intentional.
Yeah.
As a mother, as a wife, as a grandmother now. My kids call her mama, and she is like everything to them.
What does a family of 9 Sunday dinner look like in your home growing up?
It's interesting. I was the 6th of 7, so it was somewhat chaotic. It's more chaotic now, but growing up, there was some of my siblings, Tim and Trisha and Tyler, like some of them were almost out of the house by the time I remember things going on.
Okay.
But it was always a pork roast with carrots and mashed potatoes, and that my mom's casserole. It was always kind of the same thing. But yeah, just awesome. I don't remember fighting a lot with my siblings. I'm sure we did. I know there was a lot of wrestling going on because I ended up in the hospital with stitches all the time. But that I think was just more roughhousing and fun. But we're all best friends today. Like we are there for each other, and we are close to each other. All of the family is right here within about 20 minutes. The furthest is about 20-30 minutes away. But now it's chaotic. You get together, and we're all married. We all have kids, and it's just kids running everywhere. And it's a lot of fun. It's super exciting. But yeah, we've had to kind of split up some of the family reunions because we used to go to Lake Powell. We don't all fit on the same houseboat anymore, so people have split off and got their own. There were some times when we have 60 people on a houseboat, all of us sleeping under the stars. Nobody wanted to be in a bedroom, but we all just wanted to be with each other and experience everything together. So
that's so great.
When I think of your mom, and your dad, I have to think that there's, at a family gathering, because I know enough of you, not all of you, but I have to think that your parents would sit in a family gathering with the biggest grins on their faces, because I could get emotional knowing what you guys have been through the last bit, but I have to think that the sense of pride within them about how accomplished you guys all are has to just be incredible. So tell us a little bit more, if you don't mind, and not that accomplishment in this world, matters much, but you all have quite the rap list of incredible things that you've done, which I think speaks to one, your parents, what they taught you, but two, how you've chosen to utilize what you've been taught and to capitalize on it. And it's just amazing. So go through with some of your siblings, if not all of them, and describe a little bit of that.
Yeah, and I would say you just put a picture in my mind of one of the last family gatherings, and my dad would gather us for prayer. He'd express his love for my mom every single time, how beautiful she was, how amazing she was, and then he'd usually kind of step back and turn the time over to her. And that's how, like, he'd get things started. He'd preside, right? But then he would always give the attention to my mom and let her teach whatever she wanted to teach or whatnot. But he never ended a family gathering like that or a phone call with any of us without saying, "I hope you know how proud I am of you." And it usually didn't have anything to do with the financial successes we've seen. He would call and we'd talk through things. He was super, super proud of Mtn Ops and what we were doing, mainly because we were taking what we were doing to the community and helping children and families in need. And the product that started it all was for him, So he had this kind of special interest in it, but there was just this pride. He would always express that. And then, my mom would take over, and if it was a birthday or if it was some type of celebration, she'd have this joy wand that she would carry around. She was made out of wrapping paper, and she'd stuff streamers down, and she'd turn on whatever music for the holiday or whatever it is, and she would dance around the house. And then the grandkids would stand up and dance around with her. And this still happens today. In fact, two weeks after my father passed, I took my mom to South Africa with us. I was surprised she wanted to go, but she went with me and my son Beckham, and I was so grateful that she was there with us. And she packed a joy wand in her suitcase over to Africa, and I was like, "You're not.
Man,
you
what a
can't
paradox! Like an African hunting safari with the joy wand."
Well, so at the end, all the hunters are gathered together for this dinner, and she stands up, and she'd been pretty quiet most of the time. She's, she just lost her husband 2 weeks prior, and she stood up. She said, I want to thank everyone for being so accommodating of me during this difficult time, being so caring, and then she said, if we can, I want to turn on this song that I heard one of the guides playing. It was this Afrikaans song, and he turned it on, and they were surprised because she started dancing around, and she grabbed the guide's mom that was there and got her up dancing, and everyone was kind of in tears because they're watching this individual who's been suffering be able to still live with joy. And there's that quote that the joy we feel in life has nothing to do with the circumstances of our life. It has everything to do with the focus of our life. That's my mom right there, focused in the right areas of life, and so she could feel joy. And joy was always like the main thing in our life. In fact, it's one of our core values here at Mtn Ops, and that quote is part of it. And so she's able to focus in on what matters most. And if that's grabbing somebody by the hand, getting them up dancing, and she did that all the way over in Africa. Every missionary that came home from Washington, D.C. came off the plane with a joy wand through the airport. So there was people at the TSA and all that they're like, "You must have come from the Washington, D.C. North Mission." And yeah, they knew who was carrying that and why. But you work through, my siblings, and my dad, he's proud of what we do financially, and that there's been times in life where all of us have had our struggles, and so there's never this attention on the good financial success that people are having, because there might be somebody sitting over here that's not having the same success. So very attuned to what to say when and where, and I was sitting in that seat a lot of the times watching two older brothers and brother-in-laws that were just crushing it and having so much success, and I'm sitting there like, am I even worth anything? Can I ever have this opportunity that they're having? And so my parents are very good at recognizing what is happening in everyone's life that we can all contribute to, and we can all find joy and success and fulfillment from, that has nothing to do with the financial side. But I think, just giving us the right mentality of, resilience and such through our childhood and now into our adulthood has helped bring about some of that success, because all of us have kind of our story of the hardships and struggles. But, I've got my oldest brother started a pharmaceutical business called MedSource Direct years ago. I worked for him right off my mission. In fact, I worked for him my senior year of high school. I started my own business in Washington, D.C. called DC Home Care. and some of the product he was shipping, durable medical supplies, would come to our garage there in the Washington D.C. North Mission, and I was shipping product around, and I was going to the bank and sending wires, and these people at the bank were like, "How old are you?" And it was a great learning experience in high school. So I kind of saw like, I'm gonna just do my own thing one of these days. I used to go out and sell Living Scriptures videos when my brother Tim was the #1 salesperson for Living Scripture videos. I'd ask him for a part of his inventory. I'd go knock all the neighbors and sell the Christmas videos. And so I always kind of had that bug and wanted to do something similar. Tyler started working for Tim shortly after his mission, and became a partner of Tim's business there at MedSource. And they both did incredible things. And after my mission, that's actually where I met my wife. So I have a lot to thank.
She was there too.
I was working in the warehouse. She walked in. I was actually at the lunch table for my break, and she walked in, and I was just finished speaking Spanish, serving in Mexico. And I said to her, "Hi, are you studying?" And she looked at me like, "Huh?" And I was like, "Are you studying?" She's like, "No, I'm just going to eat my lunch." And in Spanish, you'd say, "Estás estudiando?" Are you a student? And it wasn't translating correct. I have a lot of those stories where it just wasn't translating correct. And that's how I hit it off with her. And we met. Tim was a singles ward bishop at the time, and his counselor was my father-in-law now. So he sent his daughter down to get a job right after I got off my mission. And we met, dated for a whopping 2 months, and decided it was time to get serious, and then dated. We were engaged for 2 months and then married. We've been married for over 20 years now. So
that is probably the best come on line I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, there's some better ones, but I don't know if I want to share them on. It was embarrassing. The Spanish to English translation wasn't happening quickly for me after the mission. But yeah, so Tim and Tyler, I worked for them. They basically handed me a phone book when I started working for them, and they said, "Here, go and find some medical supply companies and see what they need, and then go through the phone book, find another medical supply company, see if they have what that company needs." And I was just starting to broker deals from a phone book. The internet wasn't super huge back then, and that was the kind of environment. You ate what you killed. It was all commission based, and that's when my wife and I decided, hey, when the commissions start coming through, let's put enough away to eventually start our own business. And that was the goal. And we did that for about 5 or 6 years before we started our own business. But yeah, I've brother-in-laws that have been successful in the financial realm, and a younger brother that's had some social media businesses that he sold and that type of thing. So we all kind of dabble in different things. I feel like I dabbled in a few things for a number of years and just lost everything, and that was one of the best learning experiences of my life. But I finally found, like, through all that, what my purpose and passion was, and that's why we're sitting here today to tell this story. But it took some time for me to find that, and it took some rough I don't know, just years that we call it our 7 years of famine. And then there's been kind of a little 7 years of not plenty, but there's been plentiful times. And it's some of those times were the best for our marriage, for us personally, for the business now. It's just, I look at those and think I wouldn't want to do it all again, but I'm super grateful we did it.
Yeah. Among your brothers and your sisters, I mean, it seems like that there was a family culture of a lot of positive things, but when you were gathering Christmas, Sunday dinners, whatever, were you all talking business? I mean, was the vision for life and potential for financial success one thing, but just being able to start and build something of your own, was that part of the dialogue that you were having, or was it just kind of insinuated that, hey, there's opportunity out there if you're willing to work for it?
Yeah, it somewhat insinuated. It kind of came in phases. There was times when it's like, hey, we've got this idea, and some of us are coming together on it. But if not everyone was, we didn't want to leave everyone out, others out. So we super careful about conversations, because Tim and Tyler were well ahead of me and Trent. By the time we were both back from missions and such, they had been doing their thing, and I didn't want to interrupt that, but I wanted to learn from them. So, we tried to keep a lot of what we were doing just as family conversation. We had sisters and their husbands were doing their own thing. And some were doing good at times and some were doing bad at times. We all have gone through this. So careful that way, always supportive of each other. If somebody needed something, we were, there to help and support. But there was, as we came together, Tim and Tyler are part of Phoenix Nutrition, which is the business we started for the product with my dad, and now Mtn Ops. They're just silent partners. They've invested in things, and so there's always these little family reunion board meeting type things, where we're like, hey, this is what's happening in the business. Everything's good and this and that. But we found that we all get along super well, but I think that there's enough strong personalities. You get multiple chefs in the kitchen. That can be hard for family. And I've seen some families just been torn apart from it. We didn't want to do that. So yes, we share ideas, we share excitement, we congratulate each other if there's anything you need and help. But we kind of have, over the last 10 years or so, just supported each other in business, but not gotten into the day-to-day of business together, just to, in some ways, to protect the family relationship, which is most important. And
that is brilliant. That's the first time I've heard someone actually talk about that intentionally.
Yeah.
Because you can see it, right? Can't you? Just even with partners, how challenging business becomes, that you've intentionally done that and kind of kept the family sacred that way.
Yeah, that's been important to us. And I'd rather have brothers than business partners. And so that's kind of how we've approached it.
Cool. You mentioned a couple things in there about the famine.
Yeah.
So I've listened to enough, I'm intrigued enough to just hear this. And this is really where your story intersects with, the struggle in Stoke, which is Brain Stoke's all about. And so take us to the famine or the struggle.
Yeah.
What led to that, and how was that?
Okay. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I was working for my brothers, met my wife, we got married, started having kids pretty quickly after that. My oldest is 19, and then we've got a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, 10-year-old. But life changed quickly. And it does. When you get married and you start having kids, all of a sudden your roles and responsibilities in life change. And, now I had this little family unit. I was to provide, preside, and protect. And I loved that. I wanted that responsibility in life. That was the next phase of life that I was looking forward to. And me and my wife were excited about it. And for those years where we were working for Tim and Tyler and collecting that commission, we felt like we were doing a good job in the responsibilities that we had. And then in 2007, we decided we had enough money saved up. We had a few opportunities presented to us that we were interested in. And so we said, let's go out on our own. I think I met you probably a year or two before that, and we had put a little money into a money market account with you. And then we pulled it out to invest in these things. And the first was real estate. And had I known what was about to happen in 2008, I would have run the other direction and just saved that money and chalked that up as anyways, we lost our shorts to those deals. And then the other one that was the biggest investment that we put in place and that we spent our time on was actually a franchise. And instead of buying one franchise, we bought 7. And we should have bought one and scaled it, tested it. Test, learn, and apply is what I've learned, through some of that experience. But we decided to go big, and it was probably just young, ambitious, and maybe a little dumb or a lot dumb, and we bought those franchises. So with that comes building out all of those franchise stores, locations, signing leases for them, buying inventory for them, hiring 7 friends for them, and we put them down in Las Vegas. So it wasn't even near our home. So that was hard to kind of manage and oversee a business that was at that distance. And then we signed personal guarantees on each of those leases, which were about $5,000 to $7,000 a month. And then there's delays, and there always is. You invest all this capital into what you're going after, and then there's delays. It never happens on time. And so about 3 months after kind of the stores were ready to be open, they finally opened. And then about 3 months after that, we were closing them down because the franchisor got shut down. And so we had to be put on hold while there was a little bit of an investigation done. Really out of our control, but what was in our control was how many of these we bought and invested into, and at that point I was like, man, I wish we would have just done one. I had people tell me just do one and see how it goes, and we didn't. So I was warned. I wrote the check. I had to own up to that. And now all these landlords were experiencing the difficulties of 2008 real estate market as well. They couldn't replace us. So they wouldn't work with us. If I couldn't pay, they just put liens on our property, and that's what happened. We had a bunch of liens on our home. Had a daughter at the time. Our second was 2 months old. Ended up in the hospital for some kidney issues, And there was a mix-up in our insurance from when we went from being employed to self-employed, and she was uninsurable, and she had to be on medications for 3 years. So all these things started stacking up against us with these liens, medical bills, couldn't pay our mortgage. It takes a lot to wind down a business when you've invested that in those stores. Like, I just had all this equipment sitting there. I had landlords telling me to get it out. And coming after us, it felt like weekly with default, foreclosure for the house, for cars, for the business, for whatever it was. Man, I started to feel like I was drowning. In fact, there's that song that's they head underwater. They tell you to breathe easy for a while. That I kind of felt like everyone's like, it's going to be okay. I'm like, no, it's not.
My heart rate's like 190 right now. Like, my entrepreneurial heart rate is like off the charts.
Yeah, it was all consuming. Like, it was just the only thought that consumed my mind was, how do I get out of this? How do I figure out a way to come out of this and to protect and provide for my family? That's all I wanted. And I didn't care if it was just a little income now, like just to provide some basic needs. Cause we had saved up, food storage as well. You know, after listening to some ecclesiastical leaders tell us that we should have a food storage on hand, we did that. And so all of a sudden, this food storage that we had set up for what we thought would be a natural disaster was for our personal disaster. So we were cracking our own wheat. And that doesn't sit easy on stomachs either. When you start doing that, you're like, I'd rather not. But we did that, and that's kind of how we lived for a period of time. Now, my ego was in the way as well. Like, all my neighbors, my friends, these people that I saw as successful, my brothers, like, they all had things that, from the outside looking in, they looked like they were doing great. I'm sure everyone has their own struggles as well, but I just started this business that I was super excited about, told everyone about, and now with quicker than it had been built up, I was shutting it down, and that didn't.
Did they
easy.
know?
They knew enough, and they knew enough, especially my family. They knew enough that things weren't going well, but I didn't ever tell them how bad it was until it came to a point where it was like, we have nothing, and I would ask Tim and Tyler, can I clean some of your rental properties at night? Can I do whatever so I was never looking for just a freebie or a handout, like, come in and save us, please. It's just like, hey, is there some work that I can do?
Yeah.
Things aren't going as exactly as planned, and I could use a little extra, that type of thing. And so I'd go in and do some work on some properties or clean up something or this or that. And so they knew enough. And in fact, food was always on our mind, and there was somebody that would always leave groceries on our front doorstep. And I think I know who that was. And I think I know that this individual had probably been in similar shoes as us. And there's a quote that says, you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. It's the whole reason why we're doing Operation Conquer Hunger. We know what we once were. We know who we once were. And this person, it felt like at those times when people were coming into our life and giving us aid, they were people that knew our struggle, and they could see it on my face. They could see it on my shoulders. I didn't have to ask for help from certain individuals, and they were very intentional about how they'd respond. In one of our videos that we show for Conquer Hunger, there's a little picture of my daughter holding a can of Cheese Whiz, and that would probably be something that was on our Christmas list that year. And whoever would drop it off knew that bottle of Cheese Whiz would make all the difference. That was gold for her. And so it had to be somebody that intentionally knew, but that could see it without me asking. And that's where there's power in life, when we have those perspective moments in life where we've gone through something and we our eyes are open to see the need of another because we're actually going through that need. It's a powerful thing that if we choose to, there's so many things like that, so many examples that we could pick up on, that we could use to fuel our future.
Yeah.
And so there was individuals that would leave stuff like that. And I think I know who they are, but I let them do their work anonymously,
During that 7 years, did you question? Did you ask why? Or were you stalwart? And because everything you do is very faith-based. It's very obvious. It's very intentional. One of your core values is God, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, where was your mindset during those 7 years with regards to your faith?
Yeah, to my faith never wavered. Like it was God. He is the connection that allowed me to take a step forward, every day. And my faith in him and faith in my Savior Jesus Christ were strengthened more so probably in those times of life than ever before. And bringing myself and my wife together in a unique way. Like during some of those struggles, families separate, couples go their different directions. They fight about things. And obviously we were struggling and we were wanting things to go better for us. And we're like any couple, we have our disagreements or whatnot. My wife is as loyal as they come. I say, if there's one word that describes her, and it's not just loyal to me, it's loyal to principle, it's loyal to God. And it was loyal to, hey, this was a goal that you set out to do. I'm here to support you. You might need to pivot along the way and it might hurt, but let's not give up on the goal. And that's the kind of support I had from home. So that connection with her, and then us relying upon God. I went to places, physically that bring me peace in life, that are a part of my religion, more so than I ever had before in my life. And so my connection to God was just strengthened and strengthened. He was everything for me. And, there was moments where, there's these waves of emotion where you doubt yourself and you feel inadequate. And I feel that today. That's something I feel every day. I'm a CEO of this incredible business, and I'm like, what am I the right person for this? Can I help further this mission? I look around at the people that I'm surrounded by. I'm like, they're the secret sauce. I just somehow was able to connect with them, and God allowed me to put this team together in a unique way. And so I feel those feelings all the time. And as a young father, and you're trying to provide, you might have found me up a mountain, walking a trail, or sitting on a rock with my head in my hands, just wondering how do we do one more day? How do we get through this? And just leaning on God in all of those circumstances to say, okay, what is it that you'd have me do? And what should I be learning from this? That's the one thing that I think from my childhood that my parents taught better than almost anything else is like, look at the things you're going through with the eyes that God wants you to see them in. And you might see that there's a very strong purpose. In fact, the day after my father's funeral, my mom sat us down with the whole family around her, and she's suffering. I mean, my dad's death was abrupt. It was hard, the way he passed. He broke his neck falling down a flight of stairs. And she sits us down after the funeral, and she opens up to her scriptures. She calls them her letters from home. And she opened up her letter from home that day, and the letter from home said, "And I do this for a wise purpose." And so even when you're going through these difficult things, I was always taught, look for the wise purpose. What is it that God's trying to tell you? And so we tried to keep that in mind. So that's hard. It's not always, you don't do that perfectly. But because of the way I was raised and because of my own, faith and my relationship with God, that's where I turned all the time. And that's where we saw most of the miracles, was recognizing his hand, recognizing the connections he was giving us with people, and little opportunities along the way to just take another step forward.
I heard you say something along the lines of, instead of going where the grass is greener, grow the grass under your feet.
That's good.
That's good because it came from you.
I didn't know I said that. Did
Did
I just say that? Because I said something I didn't know.
You said that in another interview.
Okay.
So how does that thought, how do you compare that thought to what you experienced during those 7 years?
Yeah, I think that's a really good quote. I didn't know I shared that ever before. Another one that I like is that, God will move mountains, but you've got to bring a shovel. And I think that it's just like that. Same idea. The opportunity's right in front of you oftentimes. And so often we look beyond the mark. And if we're in tune, if we seek the right guidance, and I believe that there is a higher power, a higher ground that we can look to, that the things that we're asking for will be shown to us, and we can be guided in pretty unique ways. And so right in front of me, there was opportunities all around. I think I started through those struggles. I started to lose myself a little bit, because as the bank account dwindled and it got to zero, and then it went way, below zero. I know what life below zero feels like. I started to get more and more transactional in my business pursuits. I was looking for anything that could replace that, and not to be unethical or anything. I wasn't out doing anything immoral or things that would go against my, my better judgment. But I was losing purpose and I was losing mission, and that's what I'm all about. I was raised to be a mission-driven, principle-based individual, and those principles were always there. The core values were always there, but I was just trying to replace money that had been lost, you know? And that when you do that, you kind of, it's suffocating, because that wasn't my purpose in life. That's not where I wanted to spend my time and attention. I wanted to give meaningfully, and I wanted to help and support, someone in a unique and authentic and genuine way that would bring joy and happiness to someone else. And now it was just after the almighty dollar, right? Because you have to have it. I mean,
Survival.
Yeah, it was survival.
You're on the rock bottom. When I heard you first describe some of this story, I was on a treadmill. I walk on the treadmill often early in the morning, where, dark, almost to try to stay asleep when I'm still moving.
Yeah.
And I actually heard you describe this, and I was weeping, because I've been to that land that you were in. And, when I was a young entrepreneur, in fact, J2, who's off camera right now, but when Jackson, was young, we didn't lose our home, but we had to sell our home. We ended up in a duplex with 2 blocks from here, no dishwasher. The AC unit sounded like an airplane was landing on our roof. And that Christmas, while we were there, our kids made Christmas lists, and Jackson's on his list was a garage.
Wow.
Because he was cold going outside to get in a car. And although that year was incredibly challenging, mostly to your point, ego was tough.
Yeah.
Because I was known for kind of like driven and drive and all these attributes, that I had kind of associated with. And during that time frame that we were in, we called the dupe.
Yeah.
There was a lot of humble pie going on. And although my faith carried me too, my mental health was incredibly challenging. So I didn't necessarily lose faith, but my mental health became something that I had never thought about. Did you have a moment like that where you were still had your faith, you still want to work through it, but those moments where you said, like, I went up on the mountain, sat on a rock, and my head was in my lap, and you just didn't know?
Yeah, it was the belief in myself. I definitely, I struggled with so often. And while the faith was still there, I knew God loved me. I knew He had a plan. I knew I could find strength from Him. Could I actually build strength in myself? Could I believe in myself? Could I, that was super difficult. And I think those rock bottom moments for a faith-based individual, they find their rock. And that is power. That's a powerful moment. And my rock is my Savior, Jesus Christ. I found Him at the rock bottom, and He became that rock that I used to grow and to build from. And so I'll write my parents letters. I'll send them messages all the time, just like, thank you for instilling this type of faith in me, because that's what brought me through. You guys are all cyclists, and I'm a I want to be cyclist. I've got some bikes in the garage, but one of those moments, and you talked about Christmas, it was Christmas. And I remember a week before Christmas, we hadn't bought anything for the kids, and I was beside myself. And I got a text from my wife, and it had a little picture of a bike. My son Beckham wanted a bike so bad, was always on a bike, but he was riding around the older daughter's little pink and bikes that he didn't want to ride those anymore. He wanted a real bike. And she sent over a picture, and it had a little bike on it. And I could tell it was a junky little bike. And she said, I just found this at Deseret Industries, $2. Should I buy it? And I remember thinking to myself, this is where we're at. This is not great. And I responded like, yeah, go ahead. And I remember she brought it home. We hid it in the garage. And I have never worked so hard on a gift in my life. That night, Christmas Eve night, I went out there. And this little blue bike that was just thrashed, I started to take some paint, and I was trying to paint it with markers and paint and stuff. And then I'd pump the tires up, both tires, and within like 5 minutes they'd go flat. I didn't know how to fix a flat. I couldn't go buy a kit to fix that flat. And so I'd pump them up again and just pray, like, just leave some air in. They'd go flat. And then there was another issue. They didn't have pedals. They were broken off. And so I took that pink bike he'd been riding around, and I tried to take the pedals off, and I was going to paint them black. But I didn't know that pedals go off the opposite direction. So I sat there for a few hours
tightening them.
tightening. And I couldn't get them off.
Yeah.
Now I know, just as of like this last year. and I couldn't get it. So he had a bike with no pedals. So I took that in, I put a bow on it, put it under the tree, and I stayed up the rest of the night just praying that he wouldn't notice. And I remember when I was cleaning it up, I washed it off. There was a little Lego sticker on the front of it. And I thought, he loves Legos. I'll just leave that there, because I was peeling other stuff off, stickers and stuff. I'll never forget that morning when he came out, and I was scared to death. Like, this is what my kid's going to come out to. And he comes running out, he drops on his knees, and he's like, a Lego bike. And I thought, oh, I'm so glad I put the Lego bike on there. And then I saw him kind of step away from it, and he looked at it a little bit and came over, gave me a hug. And then later on that day, he went to the rest of the gifts, and there wasn't a whole lot, but there was some. Later on that day, I put it out in the garage, and it stayed there until we took it back to Deseret Industries. He never rode that bike, but he never acted like he was disappointed. That's all he wanted was a bike, and he got his bike. And he thanked us for it, and he loved that it was a Lego bike, and then he never rode it, but never mentioned anything about it. And so you learn a lot through these experiences where, be like a child, be grateful. Don't look for the good. And man, that was a Christmas that felt like rock bottom, but after coming away from it, I thought, I'm learning so much through these experiences where I hope that I can receive the way that he received. And ignore the bad, look for the good. And so that was a Christmas we'll always remember.
For sure. Hearing you describe that, I have like 100 questions for you. But the first one is, did you have to lose you to be where you are today? To find that rock ultimately that you built the rest of this on?
I had to forget about me. I had to find a purpose that was not just for me to go after. And that ultimately ended up, obviously my family was my why. They were the ones I was going to provide for. I didn't have to lose me as far as who I was and my character. And I did not, the line was drawn in the sand a long time ago. I knew who I was. I had core values that I was going to live by. Absolutely never had to go against those. And I am proud to say that we didn't. That was the core values you see on the Mtn Ops wall on the website. Those are the core values of my youth. Now, do we live perfectly? No. But didn't have to lose who we were. Didn't have to sacrifice our integrity to gain. But then I had to forget myself, and I had to find something that was, not just transactional anymore. And I had to find someone I could focus my attention on. And all of a sudden, that mission allowed me to endure in an incredible way, because I was focused on someone else and their need, and it was incredible when that happened.
Was that an aha moment, like when you discovered your purpose, or did that evolve?
I think it evolved, but I think that the moment with that product and with my dad, that there was like this aha moment. But my purpose, you come up with your own why statement, your mission statement, and I feel like mine has been the same for a long time, and that is to awaken the divine within individuals. And I was on another podcast this morning, and they asked me, "What is your purpose?" And they asked, "Is your purpose the same in this realm, and this realm, and this realm?" And I can't compartmentalize my life. I've never been able to. I'm not this way at church, and this way at home, and this way at my office, and this way in the community. I am who I am. And so I want to take what God's given me, and I want to be who I am in each of those realms. And so that purpose can be, it can be true to me when I'm working with my kids, and I can help them recognize the divine gifts that God's given them. I can do that with my team here at Mtn Ops. I can do that with my wife. I can do that in any church service opportunity. I can help bring out the good. When we recognize the good, we recognize God. And that's what I want individuals to feel and know, is that we do have this divine not just potential, but we have divine we are divine, right? And we have gifts and qualities that God wants us to utilize in this life, and He gives us experiences that enhance and bring out those abilities, and that's what I want to do. And so that I feel like has been my purpose with my dad, him being the purpose. When I actually, if you're okay, I'll go into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
This product sitting right here, it's called Enduro. It wasn't first called Enduro, but that's the product on the Mtn Ops lineup. My dad had a few stents put in his heart years back, and they told him he'd have open heart surgery after about 5 years of those stents going in. And his dad died of a heart attack. My mom's dad died of a stroke. So we have a history of heart disease in my family. Now, I've just been going through all this struggle financially and everything, and I was reading self-help books. I was reading my scriptures. I was reading anything I could that would make me feel good about the future, right? And then there's this book that was presented to me called No More Heart Disease. Not a book I would typically read. It's a nerdy, scientific, chemistry type book. But when it said No More Heart Disease, I thought, well, my dad's going through this right now. I've got a history of this. If this is something that could help my father, I'll read it. And through that, I discovered there was this list of ingredients basically in this book that helped us create the first product. I took the book to a chemist, asked him to whip us up a concoction for my dad, and we put him on it. Within 3 days, he started to feel his fingers and toes again, the sensation coming back. He couldn't feel his fingers and toes for about 10 years. His toenails were dead. He was always rubbing his hands and everything, trying to get the circulation back in. A lot of Americans, a lot of people in the world suffer from heart disease and neuropathy. Neuropathy is a big issue. A lot of diabetics have neuropathy. And my dad had blood pressure issues, and he had neuropathy issues, and he started to see some success with this product. And I was out of money, and so I went to my brothers who have been successful, been supportive of me, and just asked if they would invest in the business, small amount, help me buy the first 350 bottles of this product, and then I'll see what I can do with it. I'll build the website. I'll do the label designs. I'll do customer service. All these things. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it any other way because I couldn't hire anyone, and they didn't know at that point even how bad it was. We were living on credit cards, and so they invested in that with me and loved that we had something that could support our family and my dad especially. And that's the aha moment. That's kind of okay, if it's going to be my dad and he's seeing the benefit, I'm not going to give up. This is all or nothing for me right now. And knowing that my dad was suffering that way and hundreds of millions of Americans and people around the world are suffering in a similar way, there's got to be an opportunity with this, right? And I had a personal experience to go and share. We thought we'd be an online sensation, and the online supplement space, especially online, is hard to compete in, but supplements is super saturated. The first person that bought on our website was a chiropractor. I remember laying on my couch on a Sunday afternoon after the website was built, and I had done some social media posts about it. That was it. And this order comes through, and the next day I called that chiropractor, and I tried not to act excited. I didn't want him to know he was the first purchase. And I just said, hey, what are you buying this for? I just want to thank you for your order. He said, I've got patients with high blood pressure and neuropathy issues. I said, that's great. That's what I've developed this for. And then I said, if I send you a few extra bottles, would you be willing to share it with your network of doctors? And he did, and he shared it. And then I went to town knocking on every door here in Utah. And fortunately, we knew some chiropractors that my dad knew. And so I went to them and said, could you share this with your network? And it just slowly and surely started to build to where I was finally able to start paying a car payment. And then our house, we didn't pay our mortgage for 2 years. Our house was up for auction. Somehow we just stayed in. Time and time again, somebody, a nice old lady on the other line of the phone would come through with some solution to keep us in our home. And we were just so blessed to be able to keep our kids there. And we still live on that same street. You know, it's where they grew up, and we have so much history there 18 years later. But this product started working for my dad, and that was everything for me. And then about 4.5 years into that, we needed some help with some design and marketing, and I went to a marketing group and asked them to help me, and they told me about all the marketing they were doing in the hunting industry, and I hadn't done much at all hunting. I'd done a lot in the outdoors, skiing, biking, hiking, and that type of thing. But I asked them, is there a place for these types of products in the space that you guys love, in the hunting industry? And their eyes went wide, and they thought, there's this incredible hunter-athlete movement right now. This is 2014, and there's no brand, there's no product like this, consumable product, leading the way in this space. Most hunters hunt 7 to 10 days a year. Sorry, 7 to 10 days a year. The rest of the time they're talking about it, drinking about it, sleeping about it. It is their passion. It's like you guys with biking, right?
Totally.
And so if you could take a product like this and give them that to drink every day, it activates the passion in them, even when they're not on the mountain. And that's pretty incredible, because most of the time, those 7 to 10 days, that's when they're using their rifle, their bow, their cooler, their, whatever, their camo. But the rest of the year, they want to be a part of it. And so we now had a product that activated that passion within them every single day. And it was incredible how it resonated with them. These are people that usually wouldn't go to GNC. They don't go to Gold's Gym. No,
they're outside.
They go to God's gym. It's not their thing. So we were now speaking to them with the voice of a hunter, because my partners had hunted, and I knew I couldn't just fuel their passion this whole time. I needed to jump in and understand it. So I dove in head first and started hunting with my wife, with my kids, with my dad. Took him on his first hunt. Took my mom on her first hunt. Took my brother Tyler on his first hunt. I've been the pioneer of hunting in my family. And when we first started this company and I was learning what it was to be a hunter, I wasn't that excited about going out and shooting something. I was kind of interested to see, like, would I be okay with that? But I thought, I have an opportunity to go out and provide food for my family. And we've just come off this series of years of famine where food was hard to come by. Yeah. So now I saw this as an opportunity to go out and bring home food and to provide that for my family. That's what intrigued me most at first. And then my dad said it best after his first hunt. He said, I haven't fallen in love with hunting, but I have fallen in love with what hunting can do for relationships. And I actually have fallen in love with all aspects of hunting for the most part. But most importantly now, it's what it has done for relationships. I mean, it's undistracted time. Your phones usually don't work. You're out there in God's country. And one thing my mom always taught us, you go out into nature, recognize the beautiful creations, but make sure that they point you to the creator. Yeah. And so, when we're out there, I get to sit and talk with my kids and with my wife and with my parents and with my siblings and with strangers. Sometimes we do a lot of our meetings in the mountains, and sometimes I'll be out there with a hunt winner that's won a hunt that we've given away, and you get to form some pretty incredible relationships. Maybe you don't have the same similar personalities and whatnot, but you have a shared experience, and that transforms relationships. And it's hard. You're waking up at 4 a.m. and you're hiking through the mountain in the dark. You're paying good money to go suffer but there's something about suffering that brings people together. And I think hunting duplicates some of that suffering process that maybe even going hungry is like, and so when we can create hardship together, that we work through things together, it's incredible what it does to bring people together in a unique connection. So
we're believers in the good suffer. Yeah. We're all about the suffer. So there's so much there, that's rich in your experience and what brings you, to where you are today, in relationships, family, what you're doing, with Mtn Ops, a lot of this stuff. But there's something that I want to go back to that I'm not hung up on it, but I'm just impressed. And that is the way that you continue to rely on your faith, without shame. And so in preparation, for coming, I was just going back through some journals and things that I've written down. And something stuck out to me just very obviously. Romans 1:16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for there is the power of God unto salvation. And
it's my favorite scripture.
It was on my missionary plaque too.
That's awesome.
And there's something there that I think we need to double click on with you, about the power and God and salvation and you being rescued, for a lack of a better term, And so when you think through, faith, not just faith religiously, but faith in self and belief, it's a core part of being an entrepreneur, in my opinion, of just believing in something that you don't know how it's going to work out. But you pick up a scientific book, something that's totally, it sounds like not your character, and yet you're doing things in faith. You're searching and looking, and you're doing the work as you described. You're suffering through it, and in the end, there was salvation, and that's remarkable to me. So say more about that piece.
I love that scripture. And to me, it just prioritizes everything. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation. If you knew that something had the power to bring about salvation, it would be everything to you. And it is for me. And so there's nothing more important than that. And so if he can bring about salvation, and during those struggling times and you're feeling devalued or whatnot, and you look at what is my value, man, you look at each of us, it's the value of the cost of that blood, that perfect blood that was shed for us. My faith is in my Savior Jesus Christ in everything that I do. And I feel it. I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my blood. If I could do anything for the rest of my life, I would drop my nets today and I would go. But because I'm not asked to do that right now, I use my nets to try to bring people in and point them to him.
It feels like you are. I guess that's what I'm getting at. And you alluded to something in one of the podcasts that just kind of blew me away. And you said, I have stewardship over now these experiences. And you weren't talking about hunts in Africa, riding in helicopters and having, right, this cool office. You were talking about, I have a stewardship to make sure that the suffering I have endured and the redemption that has been shown to me, that I do something with it. And so now, I mean, sorry, but to say this, you now become like this disciple. Yeah. This is a mission now. I mean, when you really follow it, it feels more like a calling than it does a CEO position.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe I'm better at serving a calling than being a CEO as well.
But you're speaking. The best ones do both. It is both.
Through those times, I became acquainted with my Savior more than any other time in my life. And so the stewardship comes where it's like, hey, I was given a gift, and experience in life is a gift. Just to be sitting here at the table today, to exist is a gift. And that can be taken away. And I've learned that more recently than ever before. And so with what precious time I have, I want to utilize those moments, those experiences, those perspectives that God's given me. And hopefully one day when I meet him, he said, okay, you saw it and you responded and you utilized something. My story is not very uncommon to go through financial difficulties. Everyone listening to this has probably experienced some of it for themselves. What I think is uncommon, and it doesn't just reflect on me, it's how we've responded to that. And that's reflective of the team that's here. Like you in life, you don't do things on your own. Interdependence is one of our big core values here at Mtn Ops. You do things collectively that you couldn't do independently. Yeah. And so one of the greatest blessings in my life has been a part of putting together a team of like-minded individuals who those core values and that mission, it's written upon their heart. It's not words on a wall, And when that comes together, it's incredible. It's unstoppable. But there is an adversarial effect. Like doing good, it comes with pushback, and it's not always easy. We just held a huge Conquer Hunger event this last week, 400 people. We packed 50,000 meals, and there's always something that's trying to interrupt and distract along the way before any of those events. And so, but I became acquainted with him, and that's the best thing I can say is like I came closer to him during those times, and I don't want, because things are going good now, to I don't want to lose that connection. Sure. And so what I feel like I need to do, and the stewardship I have, and which helps me maintain that connection, is to do something with the gift he's given me. And that gift was that experience and multiple experiences along the way. So I talk a lot here at Mtn Ops about the Conquer Code. There's things we do spiritually, physically, mentally, socially. At the middle of that is my Savior. He is my Conquer Code. He's the way that I conquer.
It's beautiful. It really is. It's such a powerful, passionate, amazing mantra, that you have and that you've been able to kind of embrace. So when I hear you describe that, I mean, you can tell that you think about it and you live it, because you can verse it very well and easily. You can just tell it's top of mind. Before we came, I sent you an equation. Take us through the equation.
It was blank plus blank times blank equals entrepreneurial success.
Yep.
Was that right?
Yep.
All right. It was a good question because I could have filled that in with multiple things. But what I'm going to say for me, it is mission plus connection times time multiplied by time equals entrepreneurial success. And it was having a mission that allowed me to endure the test of time, the test of the struggles, the whatever it was. Having a mission, and that mission was my father. And that mission now, especially since he's not as close to home, means everything. I can speak about him. I can tell how he inspired this, and he continues to be my inspiration today. You do that. You have a mission, and you add that to connection. And for me, the connection is with my family who supported me through all this, who I've supported through all this. You know, it's my team that I have here at Mtn Ops that is doing incredible things. They are honestly just the most incredible individuals I've had the blessing of working with. And then ultimately, most importantly, my connection with God. Somehow along the way, priority became priorities. And really, it's always only been priority. And if we just put that one priority first, which is most important, and for me, it's God, all other things work out in the end. And then you multiply that with those connections, the mission, and then you've got to put in the time. It takes hard work. It takes patience. It takes endurance. It takes all that. But sometimes you just have to let time do the hard work. And then as you do that with all this purpose coming together, things work out. Yeah. And I believe that if people just put in that type of effort in that equation, they'd see success. And then you can define success in so many different ways. And that could be financial. That could be, you know, your house, your cars, whatever it is. I don't know. I don't look at the material things so much. I've got wonderful things that we feel comfortable with and everything now, and that's great. It's a good blessing. But I had a friend once tell me that success is knowing that those who know you best love you most. And I look at those connections, and when they saw me at my worst, they saw me at rock bottom, and they loved me no matter what. It didn't matter. And so there was success during those struggling times. I found so much success because I had my family, had my faith, had my God, had that connection. And I just had to let time do the hard work. So that's the equation that I came up with as you helped me ponder upon that.
It's an interesting thing to think through, you know, what you put into the equation, you know. Recently I heard a leader speak, and he was speaking at Silicon Slopes. His name's David Bednar. Yeah. And he was asked a question, and his response was, when you can't do everything you've done in the past, you only do what matters most. Yeah. And what you just put into your equation is what matters most. You know, those were the things that matter most. And it's awesome to hear you kind of describe, you know, mission, connection, and time. It seems like for a lot of entrepreneurs, the thing that becomes crippling to kind of their mental health or their struggle is time, putting in the time, and how long can they last. Maybe as we wind this down, any advice you would give to young entrepreneurs, old entrepreneurs about the equation, you know, any one part of that or collectively that's worked for you?
Yeah, there's I would just say, you know, there's been times in my life where I've looked for this work-life balance, and it's never balanced out. I don't think it is. I think Bednar also said, don't try to balance it. Yeah. Doesn't. And then I read something this last week that was switch those around, life-work balance. Make sure that when you prioritize your time, you get the most important things done in the right amount of time. But the problem with us is that we exhaust our efforts. Going back to my belief in God, I believe that the God who loves us, knows us, created us, gives us the time we need. We hear all sorts of complaints about, if I just had this amount of time, or if I had time to do this or this or that. I'm guilty of that as well. But God who knows us, he knows how much time we need. Our problem is that we exhaust our energies in the wrong areas. We don't prioritize correctly. And so I like to flip that now, reading that, like life, work, balance, and it's never going to be a good balance. But what I would say is that how intentional you are in those areas of life when those times are needed to receive some of your time is what matters most. And prioritizing that time is what matters most. One of my favorite books is How Will You Measure Your Life? And most of that talks about the relationship investments that we make and how those will pay eternal dividends. And so I think just not losing ourself, like who we truly are divinely, like you asked that question earlier, we don't have to lose, we should discover ourselves and the divine qualities, awaken those divine qualities, and then do that for others. And through that, relationships will be built and strengthened in so many ways. But young entrepreneurs, old entrepreneurs, I just think we have to be, I just think we have to prioritize, and we have to be more intentional with relationships that matter most, and make sure they're given the appropriate amount of time. I don't know, time and attention is so important. It's the most valuable gift we have to give.
Yeah.
When you write your book, because I have a feeling it's on your mind, what is the title going to be?
I might have mentioned it already without saying it was a book title.
Okay.
The Conquer Code.
Okay. What is going to be the penultimate chapter in that book? What's that going to talk about?
It's my relationship with God. It breaks down the core values of Mtn Ops and why they've been instrumental in the success of Mtn Ops. And the ultimate, the last story that I share is actually a story about my son. He just made a soccer team. We were super excited for him. Went up to this first tournament he was playing in Logan. He's sitting on the bench. His feet don't hit the floor. He's kind of swinging them, and he doesn't start. And I'm like, okay, he's the new kid on the team. I'm all right with this. I'm sitting across the field from him. Can't wait for him to get into the game. And halfway through the game, he starts subbing people in, but not my son, and I'm like, okay, when's this going to happen? Towards the end of the first half, they've subbed everyone in, but not my son. And so I'm sitting there getting kind of frustrated, telling my wife, should I go talk to the coach? She's like, you got to settle down. We're the new family on the team. And I'm just getting fired up. And so at halftime goes by, they do their little orange break, and then they come back, and he's sitting right back in the same spot. And I'm just like, what in the world is going on? Halfway through the first half, they start subbing kids in. Again, not my son Beckham. He's sitting there just waving, and I'm giving him thumbs up. He's giving me thumbs up. I haven't watched any of the game. I'm just focused across the field on him. And then towards the end of the game, and my blood is boiling. I'm looking over at him, and I see the two coaches just furiously, or like frantically, like, Beckham. And they send him up to get checked into the game. And they send him out. There's, the ball goes out. So he goes running out to the middle of the field. Right as he gets to the middle of the field, the whistle blows and the game's over. And I'm just devastated. And they do their little cheer. And then Beckham comes running across the field, and his coach is not far behind. And I said, what happened? And he's like, I don't know, but thanks for bringing me, Dad. And he gives me this big hug. And I audibly said for the coach here, thanks for bringing you to a game you didn't play in. And, then the coach is like, I'm so sorry. The other coach thought he was subbing in your son's position. I thought, we both thought we were playing that role, and we got confused. And at the end, we noticed. And then I just sat there. All the people left the field. I'm just sitting there all by myself. And my family's like, can we please go now? And I was like, I knew and understood the feeling that was in my heart. And I knew I needed to sit and let it happen. God was trying to teach me a message, teach me something important about that. And I think of how often, I think of my son, same story as a bike, like just being grateful to be there. Had a uniform. He got in for 5 seconds. Thanks for bringing me, Dad. Just the gratitude. I think of the mistakes that we oftentimes make, and I think of my Savior, and he's like, forgive them. They didn't know. They were confused, And then I think of a God who just, how does he feel when we forget about his son? And then this was just working through me, and I sat there, and these words just kept repeating in my mind, don't forget my son. And so often in life, we can get so distracted by many things. We've got all sorts of opportunities. We've got social media to look at. We've got all these distractions coming our way. I just hope and I pray that I personally will not forget God's son. And that is the message of my book. Like, look at the pages of your life, and you turn them over and you see him, and you turn it over again and you see him. So if you choose to have the eyes to see, you'll see God's son in everything that we do. And that's what my book, The Conquer Code, I hope leads people to understand and to see a little more often on the pages of their life. He's always there. And if we can just not forget him, keep him at the focus, don't look beyond the mark. He is the mark in everything we do. Then we can have a blessed life, and not just in this life, but in the next.
He's the man. You're awesome. Your faith is remarkable, and I'm super impressed by your devotion to the culture that you've created in your family. And here, there's so much more we could talk about the culture of Mountain Ops. We don't have time because you're going on a run with your daughter. I wish we had time to talk about it.
Priority.
We've got a marathon to train for.
We're a little late on that. It's happening this week.
I'm just grateful for the opportunity. I mean, we have this unique position we're in to interview cool people that have amazing stories, and yours is pretty awesome. So thanks for being vulnerable and sharing what you have today.
One of the things before we go, because I think that devotion that you have in following that example is pretty cool, the way that you guys feed, others. So just comment on that briefly. And I just want to hear the number, because I think it's amazing.
Yeah, we hit 5 million meals as of June of this year. And it all started with the first meal, right? And it's incredible. When we were going through that, again, faith-based family, we're looking to the scriptures, we look to our faith, we read this story about loaves and fishes, and how Jesus took a few loaves and a few fishes and he multiplied them for the masses. And that was an aha moment for me and my wife. And it was like, okay, our commitment is that as soon as we have a few loaves and a few fishes, we will multiply them. And we didn't know if it'd be for the masses. And we didn't want to wait till the boat came in full, because we didn't know if the boat would come in full. We were sitting amidst this storm, right? So we just thought, as soon as there's a few loaves and a few fishes, we'll do everything we can to serve the person that we once were. But that was our commitment while we were those people. And it started with $22, feeding some kids in Malawi, Africa. And now we were starting this supplement business that was providing nutrition. People are supplementing for their nutrition, while there's families that can't even fathom 2 meals a day, some 1 meal a day. And now I was out on the mountain hunting for food. So all these correlations kind of came together. And I was like, this is the moment, this is the place. In fact, before all these businesses, I would build out these slides, these decks that I was putting together, because I wanted to build a business that would feed hungry kids, and not just hungry kids, but if you're a parent who's had hungry kids, I wanted to remove that weight from a father, and or from a mother who's struggling, and just maybe that could just inspire some hope and some confidence. Because for us, when those groceries showed up, we could breathe. And so if I could do that for a parent. And so me and my wife made a commitment, and then the team committed to it all together. And so every order that comes through Mountain Ops, we donate a meal to a child in need. And we've donated, I think it's right around 5.3 million meals right now. And by the end of this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we hit the 6 million meal mark. And what we thought was, just going to be multiplying these resources, these loaves and fishes, it has truly turned into feeding the masses. And I have found that when you do that, when you give a resource that's not even yours, it's something God's given you, it comes back 12 baskets full. And that's what I've loved. God has time and time again filled our baskets and allowed us to do more and more with the resource that he provides us. And so that's our goal. That's our desire. That's our purpose. And when you have that kind of mission and that desire, you just don't rest until you do as much as you can. And we're exhausted, but we feel good.
You're awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
I want to end this. There's a lot of things I think we could say, but I think the way that I want to end it is thank you, Mary and Gary.
They're incredible. Christ-like people.
Yeah. You've had your daily dose.